This video was brought to you by the lovely members of my Patreon.
When I was young, the relationships that I had with older men, like those are not men that I would date now. Not at all. Hey guys, it's Kat and it's time for another episode of True Tea. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me yet again for another episode of True Tea. Thank you for being here every single week, those of you guys who are subscribed to my channel, and those of you guys who aren't subscribed, first of all, why aren't you? There's apparently 50% of you that watch these videos every single week who are not subscribed to this channel yet. And if you've been looking at my subscriber count, you know that we're almost close to 200,000 subscribers. I have a bunch of really fun things planned for 200,000 subscribers. A sewing video, you guys have been asking for that for a really long time, and something really special that my Patreon followers know about that I'm not going to share with you guys quite yet. But either way, if you're not subscribed, hopefully you will join us here. We do these videos every single week on Tuesdays, and it's all about being honest and real. It's just about sharing whatever is truthful to you in that moment. Sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong, but either way, we're honest. It's True Tea. That's what it's all about. So anyway, let's go to our kitchen and grab ourselves something to drink before we have this conversation about Shallon Lester and age gap relationships. Now, personally, I am drinking some red wine, and as I'm drinking it, I'm realizing that I have not eaten anything today. It is 4 a.m. at the time that I'm filming this, and you know, I haven't eaten any food today, but you know, I guess wine has carbs and calories in it, right? Anyway, let's drink this and let's get into the video. So when I posted my last week's video about Nikita Dragon, some people were like, oh my God, is katblaque becoming a drama channel? And I just want to make it clear that while I do like making videos about other influencers and things like that, this channel's never going to be surrounded around that. That's not what we're here. We're not here to do the messy sort of drama thing, right? A lot of times I see conversations happening in my feed. I feel like I have something to say, something, you know, that I feel like might be important for me to bring to the conversation, a nuance that I think could be teased out further in the conversation. And that's why I talk about this stuff. I'm only mentioning that because I've seen a lot of Shallon Lester videos, and I'm not trying to jump on a bandwagon. In fact, I'm gonna have a little bit of a criticism of that a bit later in this video. But, you know, I felt like sharing my thoughts about this because, you know, I am somebody who has been in many an age gap relationship. I am somebody who is in several current age gap relationships. For those who are new to my channel, I'm polyamorous. I have 5 partners, and a couple of those people are over 40 years old. So, you know, I just wanted to add in my thoughts, right? Just give you guys my perspective, because that's what we do. We have a conversation, we talk on this channel about the things, right? But let's just start out with this. Let's just start out with saying this. I don't like her. I don't like her. I don't like her. You know, she's one of these people who mistakes being mean for having a personality. She confuses being catty with being a confident, strong woman, you know? And it's kind of gross. And to me, it always comes off, you know, just watching some of the stuff, comes off as very, very immature, comes off as very, very much like someone projecting, like someone who has a lot of issues, who needs to live in this sort of existence where everything around her, everything she sees, those people, those things, they're all incorrect, but she's the one who has the truth. It's so interesting to see, you know, the kind of like discarded Perez Hilton-esque figures and what they're doing today. Because it doesn't hold up. It doesn't really hold up. Now, Shallon Lester, for those of you guys who don't know, is a relationship advice YouTuber, I'll say. She used to work for Star Magazine, as she will let you know every single video. And she basically does this sort of celebrity gossip thing that she tries to transition into relationship advice. And, you know, before this whole stuff started happening, I only saw one Shallon Lester video. It was a video about Ellen DeGeneres and how she is a sociopath or a psychopath. I don't remember the exact thing that she called her, but it was bad. And I remember watching the video and being like, this seems, A, who are your sources? B, this seems inappropriate. This just seems deeply, 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 deeply inappropriate. So when I started seeing videos about her in my feed, I wasn't totally shocked because, you know, maybe Ellen isn't the most friendly person in the world. Maybe she is a terrible person, da 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 da. But to compare her to Hitler, a little too far there, a little too far, man. I'm gonna ask you to back up. You know, it's just a little bit too much. And so I was happy to see people talking about it, but when we started getting to the whole her dating younger men thing, that's when it got a little uncomfortable for me. Now, I am subscribed to, and I do watch D'Angelo Wallace, who is a great commentary YouTuber, and he has been going through a lot of drama with her. And through that, I've seen a lot of these videos that people have been talking about with Shallon Lester talking specifically about her interest in younger men. Let's establish this right away because you guys know, listen, those of you who are subscribed to me are probably annoyed at me for doing this, but I am the sort of person where I hate just sort of thinking one way. I have many, many ways of thinking, and sometimes those ways of thinking conflict, sometimes they clash, but I would rather try to have a well-rounded view of the conversation as opposed to, you know, just a very one-sided, things are only this way and they have to be this way kind of view, right? So my long-term followers know this about me, but if you're brand new, this might be a bit frustrating for you to listen to. But I am not the sort of person who likes to sort of see things as 100% black and white. I am definitely the sort of person who tends to believe that things are always just kind of this interesting, undulating shade of gray. I don't think that everything is so clean cut or this or that. I don't really have a lot of black and white thinking about most things. And so I try to get all perspectives. Now, to me, it's fairly obvious that there is a bit of a Shallon Lester hate train going on. And to be completely honest, but between you and I, she deserves it. But that all being said, I did go and watch some of her videos, specifically the videos that she made about younger men. And I did feel like some of the things that people were saying were taken out of context. Some of it. Now, Shallon Lester has said a lot of really uncomfortable things about younger men, and she consistently refers to them as boys, which personally makes me feel real skeevy, but you know, to each their own. But to be honest, when I listen to her talk, a lot of times when she says that, it does kind of sound like a joke. Like when I've heard her talk about her own personal relationships, because I think we've established now that Shallon is 39. When she's talking about dating younger men, she's usually talking about dating men who are, you know, no more than 5 years away from her current age, right? So, you know, even though she makes a lot of jokes about dating 22-year-olds, when you hear her talk about her own relationships, it's a lot of, oh, he was 2 years younger than me, or he was 3 years younger than me. At least in the videos that I watched, the most she said was 5 years. And so I don't necessarily believe that she's going after super, super young guys, like underage guys, but she did thirst after, you know, Justin Bieber at 15 years old. So I don't know, not really making a good case for her, to be honest, and wouldn't put it past her, right? But I just want to point out that I think a lot of times when she's saying these things, she is joking, but these jokes aren't funny. These are not jokes I think you should be making. And you know, the interesting thing about it is there's this weird sort of double speaky thing that happens with her, right? She is very girl power, which, listen, we've all established that I'm a feminist. I'm all about that. She's all about, you know, let's do the things that men do, you know, especially when she talks about dating younger people. I mean, she talks a lot about how normalized it is for older men to date younger women, but how it's not normalized for older women to date younger men, right? And she says that at one hand, but then she has this incredibly black and white thinking when it comes to men and women, masculinity, femininity. She has this incredibly this or that kind of mentality. Men do this, men think this, men do this, women think this, women do, you know, this sort of thing. And And you know, while I personally do believe to some degree that because of the way that we're socialized and because of the way that we engage in public space, there are slightly different sort of nuances that come with being a woman and being a man. A lot of his shit's the same. A lot of his shit's the same. And the more you try to define these differences, the less different they seem, honestly. You know, listening to her talk about dating younger men, the reasons she gave are the reasons that I know a lot of older men give. You know, she says that there are a couple of benefits to dating younger men. One of the ones she mentions a lot is that they are excited to be there. They are very, very, very excited to be there. She specifically mentions that they are excited to see you topless, right? Which for me insinuates that when she's tried to date men her age, they're not as excited about the body, which, you know, younger people, they do tend to be, I mean, sex is new to them. I mean, hopefully it's new to them, you know? And so there's a bit of excitableness behind, that's not a word. You're a bit more excitable about sex. You're a bit more open about sex because it's so new to you. With time, with age, you sort of figure out what you like and figure out what you don't. She talks about this in the context of older men who, in her words, want to just jackhammer her instead of really being interested in what she wants, right? And that's kind of another thing. And I think this is the one that makes me the most uncomfortable, is she talks a lot about, you know, younger men being this sort of like blank canvas that you can project onto, and they're willing to correct themselves in the way that an older man isn't, you know. If she tells him to do something as a younger man, he's more likely to listen and say, yes, okay, than an older man who has the ability to say, no, I'm actually just happy doing things the way that I do them. And for me, that's the one that sticks out a lot, because with time, I kind of start to recognize that a lot of the men that I was dating when I was younger are honestly just the kind of guys who could not date women their own age because those women would not put up with their shit. Those women would not put up with their shit. Those women, you know, would listen to his request, roll their eyes, and move the hell on, right? Whereas for me, you know, being a little 19-year-old, you know, not even able to go to the clubs and things like that, you know, and having daddy issues on top of all of it, you know, I was eager to please. I was excited that some man was interested in me, especially some older man with resources, you know? And so I was pliable, I was excitable, I was more willing to sort of do the things that he wanted me to do because I was just so happy to be there. You know, to me, the thing that weirds me out about these age gap relationship things is, listen, like I said, I'm 29, my oldest partner is 53. The thing that weirds me out a bit about it is just at 29, you know, I work a lot at colleges and universities, right? And I work with these little 22, 23-year-olds, right? And these are smart kids. These are kids who are really, really, really smart. They're educated, they're on top of their shit, they know what they're talking about, they're passionate. These are smart, smart kids. But when I talk to them, even if they're technically like a couple of years younger than me, I feel like I'm talking to a child, especially in your 20s. You know, 21 is very different from 23. It's very different from 25. It's very different from 29. You know what I mean? It doesn't seem like it because it's just a couple of years, but those are drastically different years. And so as I've started to recognize that weirdness in myself, it's felt even weirder to me that there are men who actively date women way, 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 way younger than them. Way, 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 way younger than them. And listen, let's just make this really clear, right? I'm not against age gap relationships. I would be a hypocrite. I would be a hypocrite if I came on here and said that an age difference in a relationship is always bad. That's not what I believe in, right? But I think there's a difference between falling in love with someone, you know, where you've got that age gap, and deliberately going after someone because of the age gap. I think there's a very distinct difference. Now, as a younger person, it's really common for you to want to, date older people. That's normal. That's normal. But I think that, when you're older, I think about this a lot in my own context because I was definitely dealing with men when I was underage. And, not to get too deep into trauma, we've already talked about this on this show, but one of the things I kind of recognized, looking back, is that it was always those people's responsibility to say no. I was young, I was curious, I was precocious. I wanted to be with older people, and so I tried. And unfortunately, I was successful. And there were times where I would look at those situations and be like, well, it was definitely my fault. I mean, I was putting myself out there. I was, making sure that they saw me. I was going specifically after them because they were older, But at the end of the day, I was a young person whose mind wasn't fully, formed, I didn't really understand the gravity of the decisions that I was making. That older person who has been my age definitely understood where I was at, and instead of sort of being like, hey, you know what, maybe you don't want to be with me, maybe I'm not the right person for you, instead of doing that, they were excited by my ignorance. They were excited by my lack of knowledge. They were excited by how wet behind the ears I was and how eager to please I was because of my age. I'm a very social person. I exist in a lot of, I guess you would say, shallow spaces. I'm the kind of person who I go to a lot of events where your appearance is very important and your looks are kind of at the forefront. I'm part of the BDSM community, for example. I'm part of a lot of alternative lifestyle communities. And it's been interesting to sort of be at my age at 29, even in those spaces, and see the difference in how men talk to me. When I was a little 21-year-old, I'd walk into these spaces bright-eyed, not really sure what was going on, nervous, shy, and these men would just, they would just creep up on you because they're so they're almost excited to see that. And as I get older, that twinkle behind my eye fades, listen, I'm still fun. There's still things that I have yet to experience, but I'm not that little 21-year-old anymore. So I don't have that sort of excitable thing. I don't have that sort of I've never done anything like this before. I'm so curious. I don't have it. And, I remember when I first moved to LA, I hope people figure out who this is, but when I first moved to LA, I met this guy and he runs a really big poly house out in LA. And I kind of had a little bit of a crush on him. And when I first met him, this guy's older, he's much, much older. Very hot though, very hot. When I first met him, I told him that I was new to the community, which was true. I had moved to LA from Orange County. I knew nobody. I was still getting my bearings in the alternative community in Los Angeles. I told him that I was new, and he was so excited to, have me around. I would come over to his house and I'd be naked in his pool all the time and things. It was such a normal thing, and he was so excited, for me to be around him as a newbie. But he didn't understand that when I said that I was new, I didn't mean that I was new to absolutely everything. I didn't mean that I had never done anything. I had never done anything like this before. I didn't mean that. I didn't mean that at all. What I meant was I was new to LA. And when we started having more conversations, and this guy's a BDSMer, and he recognized that I was experienced in BDSM, that I currently had someone that I bottomed for, it was you could just see the excitedness, all of his excitement. Why am I making up words? All of his excitement just kind of dissipated completely, because I wasn't this girl who he could mold anymore. I wasn't, There's such a difference. I think for some people, there's such a difference between meeting someone who you can mold and being with someone who's excited to be with you even though they have experience. And there are some people who are very, very, very excited by you not having experience, by you not really knowing boundaries yet. You know, when I listen to Shallon talk about these younger men not, just sort of agreeing with what she's saying, what I hear personally, what I personally interpret is that she does not like when men have understood their boundaries. When men say, no, I'm just not going to do that. You know, there's a lot of ways to interpret the way that men express their boundaries, for sure. But I personally hear that she's more excited by men who have not quite learned how to set proper boundaries for themselves. You know, time and heartbreak and stress and age will teach you, hey, I'm gonna not do this. I'm not gonna enter into these sort of relationships or do these certain things because I don't want this result. And sure, maybe that's irrational for you to have such an overcorrection where you're not doing anything because of a bad experience that you had. But at the end of the day, being able to draw up your boundaries and say, no, I'm not doing that, that's just a sign of growth and maturity. And that's something that Shallon seems to resent in men. And I think that is very, very disturbing. If anything, from all the things that she said, that's what bothers me. That's what bothers me. The fact that she seems so excited by men who don't know their boundaries, right? You know, at the end of the day, to each their own. I don't think that every age gap relationship is doomed. I don't think that they're always bad. I don't think that, it's impossible for them to work, Personally, I'm a big observer. You guys should know by now, I'm a people watcher. I've known a lot of men, a lot of women, a lot of people in LA, because I've been here for a bit. And whenever I meet somebody who has a string of, young 20-something partners, it's usually not a great sign. That's usually not a great sign. In fact, I don't want to be messy, but I know this one woman, and she is in her 40s, and she's pretty, but she's a mess. She is a lot. She's a lot. And she just recently started dating this little 21-year-old. And they seem happy. But I can already sort of observe the she separated him from his family kind of thing. He's saying everything's okay, but I don't even know if he knows things aren't okay. Do you know what I mean? I don't even know if he understands that there's a reason why this woman has had a lot of hard, frustrating relationships with older men, and suddenly now she meets this 21-year-old and it's a-okay. This 21-year-old just doesn't know yet, just doesn't know better yet. Because here's the thing, the relationships that I had at 22, 23, not 21, 20, I was in a relationship at that age, but you know what I mean? When I was younger than that, when I was 18, 19, 20, I don't know why I was talking about 21, I was in a relationship, but you know what I mean? When I was young, the relationships that I had with older men, those are not men that I would date now. Not at all. None of those men are men that I would want to date today. None of them. They're men who made sense for me way back when, before I knew any better, but I would never want to be with them now. Never. So, again, while I think some of the things that, that are being said about Shallon are kind of taken out of context, yeah, she does have some really fucked up ideas about dating younger men, and she definitely, I think, is a bad person. She's a really, in my opinion, just a shit person. Just a person I would never want to be around. I don't want to, I don't want to diagnose her in the way that she's diagnosed other people, because that would be unfair. That'd be rude. I'm not that kind of person. But to me, she feels like a woman who has a lot of issues, who projects a lot. And I do sincerely wish that she, I hope that she gets through this. I hope that she gets past it, because I can't imagine contributing what she's contributed to the online universe and being proud of it and being happy with it. I think sometimes you say stuff like this, you do stuff like that, and it doesn't feel messed up or wrong or weird or bad. But I would hope that she would take some time and look at the stuff and realize that she's being most well known for being a terrible person, and that's not something that I think you should be comfortable with. So anyway, I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this whole situation. How do you feel about age gap relationships? Have you had any good or bad experiences with them? I would love to know in the comment box below. And while you're here and you've made it all the way to this end part of the video, I cannot talk, put this in the comment box below, this emoji in the comment box below. I would love to see it. Really appreciate those of you guys who do the emoji every single week. You guys are so cool. You're like so cool. So cool. So yeah. Anyway, I'll see you guys next week. Right now, you're looking at 2 videos you can watch if you'd like to continue to sip true tea on this channel. And in the corner, there are several ways you can send me a tip. And also, if you want to send me a package, there are ways you can do that. I haven't gotten the package at all in this quarantine, and I would love your package. It's been quite some time. I can't not make that joke. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.